Good morning, everybody. Let me just share my screen. And while I'm doing this, a big thank you to the Cost Action team for arranging this seminar. I want to give a bit of a background on FIRE, but first of all, myself, I'm Stefan Dörr. I'm the Vice Chair of the FIRELINKS Cost Action. Artemi, the main chair, will come shortly after this presentation and tell you more about the actions within the Cost Action program of FIRELINKS. But I'd like to just introduce you to FIRE in general. I'm assuming, and I may be wrong, that many of you know about FIRE simply from the news. So your knowledge may be based on what you see on television. Some of you will be experts, but I'm keeping it as simple as possible to give you a background. It'll take about 20 minutes or so. So let's just have a look at what we see in the media. Big fire events, for example, 2016, we had the most expensive wildfire in Australia in recorded history. Fortunately, nobody got killed in this event. In Portugal, 2017, 104 deaths, the most deadly series of wildfires ever recorded in Portugal. In Greece, a year later, 102 deaths, pretty much in one single town, very tragic. 2018, Paradise, California, the most expensive fire to date in the United States with 85 deaths, again in a single fire event. So these are the kind of news that we see. And then only 2 years ago, the Black Summer fires of Australia, the largest forest area burned in recorded history. So death sells in the media, but also extreme fire events in general, of course. So if we look at Europe, for example, in 2022, the main focus of this webinar, we had extreme fires in France, in Germany, Greece, Portugal. They were all over the news throughout the summer. But fire is actually nothing new on Earth. So fire is often portrayed as catastrophic, and of course it is in many ways, but fire is really nothing new. We had plants co-evolve with fire for about 400 million years. And fires burn roughly the size of Europe across the globe every year, so between 3 to 4.6 million square kilometers. Most of these fires we don't hear anything about. So this is equivalent to about 3 to 5% of the global vegetated land surface that's burning every year. This is a screenshot from a week of fire activity derived from satellite imagery from last summer, 25th to 31st of July. And what you can see here is, of course, Africa is dominated by fires, South America dominated by fire, Northern Australia during that time, Southeast Asia. And of course, what we heard about were mainly the fires in Europe. Here, we didn't even hear about the fires in Eastern Europe, Eastern United States. Again, we don't really hear anything about this. It's the fires that hit the news are usually those that are very destructive. And many of these fires are not destructive. Many of these fires are normal. So if we look at actually fires occurring naturally, which would be ignited by lightning, they are recurring in many ecosystems. And so those ecosystems have co-evolved with fire, and some of those ecosystems require fire to be maintained. So for example, if we look at the boreal forests of Alaska and Canada, or parts of Siberia, fires naturally occur every 150 to 300 years. If we go to Australian eucalypt forests that have been hit so hard in the last fire season, fires are typically recurring naturally every 30 years or so, so a highly fire adapted system. And then if we go to savanna grasslands, for example, parts of Africa, Australia, we have recurring fires every 1 to 5 years. So in that sense, fire is really nothing unusual in those ecosystems. So how about Europe? Well, this is where it gets really complicated, because in Europe, we don't have virtually any extensive natural vegetation zones left. We've cultivated Europe intensely for millennia, and most of the forests are not natural either. And the ignitions that we have are largely by humans. We have some lightning ignitions, particularly in Southern and Eastern Europe, but the majority of ignitions that cause fires are by humans. It could be either accidental or by arson. And so therefore, we don't really have a natural fire regime anymore in Europe. We haven't had this for essentially hundreds, and in some areas, thousands of years. So we don't really know what would be normal. On top of that, now we have fire, we have eliminated fire from land management. So for example, on the bottom left, you can see stubble burning, which is very common across Europe, but this is now banned for good reasons as well, but you don't really see fire in the landscape very much. And then firefighting is highly developed, especially in the Southern Europe, less so in the North, and therefore we are pretty good not as good as we would like to be, but pretty good at extinguishing most fires, but of course not all fires. Another aspect that's worth looking at is related to this land use change, because especially since the 1960s, we've had land abandonment in southern parts of Europe and some other parts of Europe, which has led to the encroachment of forests and shrubs, and we therefore have more vegetation that's flammable. In addition, we've planted forests in many areas. So if you look at the figure here on the right, these are changes from cropland to grassland over 2 different periods, from the 70s to the 90s and from the 90s to 2010. And so everything that's in blue and red, and that's not everything actually, we have more recent changes as well, where cropland has changed to grassland and forest. And of course, this is now more flammable. And as I said earlier, we are now increasingly effective in fighting fires. But if we fight fires, that means that the fuel is not burning, it's still available in the area, and it might cause a more extreme fire in the future. So ultimately, we have an extensive fuel accumulation across many parts of Europe. And so much of Europe is now much more flammable than it was in the past. So this is just a snapshot from a report that came out last week, the European Forest Fire Report. And this is the burned area across Europe for 2021. We don't have a full picture yet, of course. 2022 is still ongoing, but these are the patterns of fires in 2021. So of course, as is typical, parts of Spain, Galicia, and parts of Portugal are the hotspots of fire. Sicily as well, southern Italy, Greece as well. Parts of Turkey were heavily affected by fire. And even in the UK, Norway, Sweden, and Finland, we saw quite a few fires. And of course, also Germany, those fires hit the news, and southern France as well. And in terms of those impacts, what really hits the news, of course, is the loss of life. So fires are largely considered negative. They have big impacts. And so we're looking at the loss of life, of infrastructures, but also crops and forest plantations. And again, these are the highlights we see in the media. We have other impacts, for example, smoke emissions, which become more and more aware of these days. Also mental health issues from the threat of fire. In terms of smoke emissions, we have about 300,000 premature deaths every year across the globe from smoke. So the indirect deaths are much, much higher than the direct death from fires. We also have enormous costs of suppressing those fires, and we have, of course, those wide economic losses. And this is not just buildings that are being lost or forest plantations that are being lost, but of course, airports need to be shut down, roads need to be closed, and the suppression itself of those fires is really expensive. And then we have the impacts on ecosystems that go beyond the direct destruction of forests, as we can see here. For example, we have enhanced soil erosion, we have changes to water quality, we have water contamination of drinking water, and of course, we also have carbon emissions, which now become more prevalent in the news as well. Although these are often misrepresented, because under normal circumstances, those emissions from wildfires will be sequestered again when the vegetation recovers, unless we have a long-term loss of forest or of peatland. Now, what happened in 2022? Now, 2022, and of course it's not finished yet, has been the worst fire season on record. And on record, we're roughly talking about the last 20 years or so, except for 2017. 2017, we had a larger area burned, and it's unlikely that we're going to beat this record in 2022. But 2022 has otherwise been really severe. So here on the right-hand side, you see the cumulative burned area across Europe in red, and also the average here in blue across the period from 2006 to 2021. And what we can see basically is that 2022 was really bad. It kicked off really, really badly and was above the maximum we've seen in the record, but now it's quietened down a little bit. And so the overall record was 2017, but nevertheless, it's obviously much, much more than we would have had on average. And of course, climate change has been a major factor in the media on that. And of course, that's true. Very few are now denying that climate change plays an important role in fires, not only across Europe, but globally. If we have prolonged dry seasons, prolonged heat waves, the vegetation will dry out more severely and become more flammable. It's a very simple relationship. And things are going to get worse. So there are projections that wildfires, for example, in the Mediterranean will increase by 40% at 1.5 degrees warming. But we're not even sure whether we can meet 1.5 degrees warming. The way we are going at the moment, we will exceed 1.5 degrees warming in the foreseeable future. So where are we going in terms of climate change? I said earlier, it's not just the weather conditions and the climate that affect fires, also the land use change and the management and the way we fight fires that across Europe that affect fire. But let's have a quick look at fire and climate change. Here on the right-hand side, you can see the changes in extreme fire weather. So basically the number of days in the year that promote extreme fire. And this goes from the 1850s up to 2100. So these are climate model projections, different climate models that tell us how many days a year we have. And this is an example for Eastern Siberia, the Mediterranean, Pacific Canadian forests, Southeast Australian forests. And the headline really is, what we see is that these are the observed number of days compared to the modeled ones. They're increasing pretty much everywhere. They're increasing quite dramatically in the Mediterranean, even more dramatically in the Pacific US. And what's also worrying here, that the reality is actually steeper, the increase is steeper than what the climate models have been projecting. And it will go up without a doubt. So again, specifically, if we look at Mediterranean Europe here, this curve is relatively steep. And the climate models are predicting that it's going to increase with warming. And the relationship between warming and fire is pretty straightforward in that respect. So we can expect more extreme fire, even irrespective of any further land use changes. Just a couple of examples before I move on to filings more specifically. If we then look at the number of extreme fire days, we can also identify extreme fire days by what's called fire weather index. So this is essentially a dimensionless index that tells us how severe a fire might be under the prevailing weather conditions. And here you can see the fire weather index in Germany. I'm just giving you the examples of Germany, where we had extreme fires in the area around Dresden, crossing into the Czech Republic. So these are individual days throughout the spiral that starts in 2000, going all the way up to 2022, from January through the summer, through July into December. So we can see, of course, the winter season, we have very few extreme fire weather days. And of course, in the summer, they increase, obviously, with warm temperatures and drier weather. And pretty much the summer varies across the board from low fire days, wet and cool days, to high fire days, or fire risk days in terms of fire weather index. But what's been pretty shocking in Germany for this period where we had those extreme fires near Dresden, that the fire weather index reached 85, a number of 85. And the highest we've seen before was in 2011 was 69. That's a massive jump to 2022. So what we've basically seen is an unprecedented extreme situation in terms of fire weather. I'm just going to give you one more example here from England, so not the entire UK, just England. We've had the largest number of houses destroyed this year in the summer in fires near London. And we had a similar jump here in terms of the fire weather index. The worst one, was actually in 2011, same year. It was pretty bad, but it jumped to 2022 from 62 to 75. So again, a really steep jump in terms of fire weather index. Things are clearly getting worse, and not only across Europe, they're getting worse across the globe in terms of fire weather. So what are the challenges then for Europe and the need for a cost action like filings, the need for knowledge exchange? Now, obviously from what I just presented, oops, sorry about this, my mouse is too sensitive here. Climate change brings increasingly extreme fire weather. Land use change for a long time now has increased the vegetation fuel we have in the landscape. That together gives us more extreme fire behavior. So the fire becomes increasingly extreme, more difficult to suppress, more difficult to fight. We also have a growth of population, especially in the rural-urban interface, so that increases the ignitions and increases the exposure of humans to the risk of fire. And now we also have fire affecting increasingly areas where fire has been historically rare. So these are the northernmost parts of Europe, but also increasingly parts of the UK, for example, parts of Norway, where fire has occurred in the past, but it's now becoming more common. Another issue has been that firefighting has been the key focus of policymakers instead of preventing fires through landscape management. And this is one of the main issues we are focused on, or we need to focus on, not just in Europe, but across the globe. Prevention is essentially much safer and much more effective than firefighting once fires are actually ignited. So in terms of fire links, the aims of fire links, which initiated in 2018, and Timmy will tell you a lot more about this in a moment, the aim was to coordinate research and build capacity in some specific areas related to fires. So understanding fire dynamics and facilitating prevention, fire effects specifically on soils, which can be heavily affected by fire, the management of the post-fire landscape to reduce soil loss, sediment movement, and also contaminant transfer, for example, to drinking water supply reservoirs, the fire impacts on biota, and one has to stress here that fire impacts are not always negative. Some biota require fire, some biota are fire adapted, so they're both positive and negative. And then, of course, also the socioeconomic aspects of fire and the risk management. These are the aspects that are often focused on in the news. And so with this, I'm handing over to Artemi to tell you more about fire links itself.
Then first I want to show you some images that which make all of you to understand which is the new situation we are going to face with the forest fires. Following the talk of Stefan, we use the MODIS maps to see how is evolving the forest fires in the world. In one way to see that forest fire has been always with us is I think it's running.
Do you hear us?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, yeah. Okay, just following the words of Stefan, to show you that fires are relevant all over the world. If you see this map, you will see the monthly forest fire, how they evolve and how they distribute along the globe. You will see that except in the Antarctica, Greenland, and some desertic areas, fires are present everywhere. But this already was highlighted by Stefan, and we are not ready for that. It's unbelievable that in a developed society like in Europe, we still see fires as something exceptional. It is not. It is with us. It has been with us forever. And we need to change this. We need to change how we manage the situation. We need to develop risks. Okay. We need to change how we face the problem. In one way, we don't have education. If you see the primary, secondary school books, the fire is not shown as maximum as a risk, few seconds, few minutes in the whole year. Then we need to change education, also the perception of the population. And now we are in a different situation than a few years ago. The amount of fuel in the mountains is so high that the fires, they create their own wind, their own temperatures. They progress by their own with not out of control many times. I'm using here some images that in a Fire-Links meeting was shared with Marc Castellnou from Catalonia. He's a firefighter, and he's showing images of how the fires progress. I want that you will see this, for example. You will see this again. Is that the forest fire that starts at night? We have the camera. Then the fire create a lot of smoke, a lot of hot air, and then suddenly drop everything and burn everything in suddenly. Okay, and then even the camera is affected for this. The next image is something similar, but we recorded during the day. Then you see how in the morning start a small fire. And then this was until now what we had. Then we had the chance to send the firefighters and stop this. Okay, and but now it's not like that, because in less than 10 hours, the fire progressed in a way that created such an amount of smoke and many gases in the atmosphere that suddenly they drop down and they burn an area of 11 kilometers in diameter. You see, it's in few minutes the things change, and all the firefighters which are involved, they can have a big problems. Okay, then it's not only that the situation how it was in the past, is in which direction is going the new situation. Okay, then this example is from is not from a camera far away. It is very close from the camera of the firefighters. Then you can see that it's dropping fire in the middle of the field. You can even hear the words of the firefighters. Okay, then is that in areas that there is no fuel, like the field that you will see in few seconds, you will start to see how is the fire started. Then the fire himself is creating enough energy, enough fuel to burn everything. And this is very dangerous. You can see this field on flame, even that it's far away the fire. Then this is the new situation we are facing, and we need to, in Farallings, we are finding this in many countries, this difficult situation that can damage the future of our land. Pay attention that, okay, I think I got to move to the next one. This is the new situation we are facing. This is because in Farallings we want to go further with the construction with many activities. See, you see the smoke they create they don't go out and change all the meteorological conditions. Firefighters, they say we cannot stop that. This is a big change in few decades. Okay, then and this last one is this one. This is recorded by a French firefighter inside his lorry. You know, he cannot go out. These are the glasses of the. This is because you cannot see properly the fire, but they are inside the car. We are going to face more and more this situation that the people will be trapped. Okay, they will be trapped in by the forest fire. It's a big risk for the future because we cannot solve this. Okay, then in Farallings we are in one way researching. We go to the webpage. In Farallings we are in one way researching this new situation, but also we pay attention to 5 main topics. One is fire and the dynamics of fire. This is why we collaborate with Nieves Fernandez, the leader of the working group. And then we have one group that just to research, to create a community around this topic. Then we have also fire and biota, fire and soils, fire and water, and fire and society. Fire and biota, fire and soils, and fire and water are more traditional working groups in which colleagues are working there. We have colleagues that they are already retired and still collaborating with us. But the new ones, fire and society, is very important because until now we did not communicate properly the issue of forest fires with the society. Here you can see, I go to use the web pages. I have my presentation ready, but it's just mainly print screens. Jesus Rodrigo helped me on this. But I think it's better that all of you will see the web page, because the web page is giving you an idea. You can visit later on and see who we are. Stefan and me, we are the chairs, but there are other people like Nieves, Joan Strain, Irena, Dragana, and Jesus, Anna Bruch, who is in charge of the STMS. We are promoting a lot that young scientists will move from one country to another to do science, and Yanis Daliakopoulos, who is in charge of the media. We in the web page you can see all our events, all our activities, what is going on. We have meetings in Antalya, in Krakow, in Kleve, and many others. We used to organize like around 7 meetings per year, plus the webinars, which are we are very active. The pandemic induced on this to try to make that the communication will be not only in situ, will be only online, and this is helping a lot. And now one of the things that we are developing a lot is that we are using a lot of social media, in which we are promoting the use of the social media. We have a Twitter and Faralinks that is very active. For example, here is one in which you can see what we did in Turkey. Here is the one of the fallas that that we in one of our meetings we lighted is a prescribed falla in which it is okay. Then you can see that falla is not only a risk, it's also a tool for many firefighters in which you can light the fire and make that some areas will be not affected later on. Then fire can be also being seen as a tool. We are promoting a lot the dissemination of all our findings in the social media, just because we need to reach the society, and this is very important now. Also, this is because we use newspaper, we use also the TVs, the radios. We are very active in this part. This last summer was a very bad summer for forest fires, and especially in Spain. In Italy, we have a lot of forest fire, and then we were present in many countries with the cost action Faralinks. Then now we are in the last year. We initiate, in fact, today. Well, yesterday we were initiating the last year. We are planning almost again 7 meetings around the Europe with many colleagues. It will be 2 general meetings and 5 meetings that will be devoted to key topics like fire and fire dynamics, fire and society, fire and water, fire and soils, and fire and biota, which are our working groups. But also we are developing a training school that we expect that will be developed in Turkey. And in this training school, we will show how to use prescribed fires, but also how to use helicopters or firefighters to control the fires. And what will be the future? This will be last year. Then the cost actions, in my opinion, are like a seed that need to grow until to be a big seed, a big tree. Then we are developing different branches from this tree to keep going with the community that we built in the last 4 years. One will be to develop a series of congresses that are related to forest fire, and this is the International Congress on Fire in the Air System. We already did one here in Valencia. It was born based in the cost action, but the next one will be in Granada from the 4th to the 8th of July in 2023. This is one of the issues. We have also another congress, a companion congress, which is the non-conference on fire effects on soil properties, which was developed by Xavier Úbeda from Catalonia 20 years ago. And we want to keep going in this, and we will collaborate with them. And the other option that we have is to create a community of scientists, stakeholders, land users, land managers, politicians, policymakers. Fire need really an agreement with the society. Right now, there are sectors, actors that see fires as an enemy. Others are a part of nature. Others, they would like that fire will not exist. Others propose that fire will be present in the management of the ecosystems. The society is not well informed, and then Faralinks, I think, still have a big task to create a community for that. This community was initiated by Saskia Kestra. This is because she's here to inform about which is her proposal about the use of new ideas for the future, and this is called Global Fire Partnership. We also propose that there will be probably a publication around this community, but right now the two main pillars we are building is congresses and to keep alive our community, and also this Global Fire Partnership that is just initiated and be disseminated and inviting everybody that want to join us. Then Saskia, I will give now the floor to Saskia, and she can explain a little bit more, which is the future we have. Okay.
Hey, thank you, Artem. I just go to change to the other presentation. Okay, see, just put this down. Okay, so the Global Fire Partnership, because as Artemi explained, it is important to make sure that all the work that was done in Firelinks is not going to be lost, and it can keep going with the community and also expand the community beyond beyond Europe. So the main objective of the partnership is to, as I said, to continue with the family of Firelinks, to expand to the rest of the world, and then try to raise awareness with the idea to impact research and to impact policy. So we describe the mission of the Global Fire Partnership in this sentence, that is to contribute to prepare society, practitioners and scientists to the intensification and geographical spreading of wildfires under the impact of climate and land use change. Then, so what we would like to do with this partnership is to help to synthesize knowledge on the one hand and enhance research on the different topics that already have been addressed also by Firelinks. So fire dynamics, fire risk management, fire effects on vegetation, fauna, soil and water, but also taking into account the socioeconomic, historical, geographical, and the political aspects and the perception of fire in society, and what type of land management approaches could be good to manage fire in across the globe. So on the one hand, we would like to connect the scientific community with each other. So different communities of science that are actually faced newly maybe with fire than the traditional group of people that have been working on fire effects for many years. But also to connect different regions around the world that are, as was explained first by Stefan and later also by Artemi, that because of climate change and because of different land management strategies or land abandonment that's been happening a lot, the risk of wildfires is changing, and therefore we need to make practitioners, policymakers, and citizens more aware of this situation to boost the emergence of new approaches to research and manage fire, to contribute to harmonizing the way the fires measured, monitored, and modeled, and to power synergetic collaboration between research groups. But also then, so that is the first part is more for the scientific community, but equally or more, maybe even more important is the awareness raising among policymakers, citizens, and stakeholders, with the final objective, of course, also to influence policy related to fire management. So with that, we hope to contribute to facilitate creating fire resilient landscapes based on these integrated and integral approaches that I just explained. So the first idea now is to work with the same type of working groups that are currently existing in Firelinks. So the fire dynamics and fire risk management, fire and biota, fire and water, fire and soils, and fire in society. But this is also something that we would like to discuss on our official launch, which I will explain a bit more later. And then we would also like to make regional groups. So of course, the European one will be relatively simple because we can build on everything that is already here made by Firelinks. But also we would like to see if we can make regional groups in Oceania, North and South America, Asia, and Africa. course, this doesn't need to be exactly the same as Firelinks is currently, but can be also built on the existing initiatives that are currently already there, and then try to connect all of them together within this fire partnership. So the official launch is at the Fire at the Earth System Congress that Artemi was just mentioning, which is going to be from the 4th until the 8th of July in Granada. And then for my final slide is this was one that if you would like to be connected then to this global fire partnership, please send a message to me, which you can see my email address here. Also, we aim to in the future, after the Fire in the Earth System conference that's going to be next year in Granada, there's going to be also another congress that is Terra Vision that is going to host fire related research. And there's also going to be the FESP, as Artemi already said, but you can see also the link to this conference if you are interested to see and potentially attend. So you can also follow us on Twitter, and you can see the newest updates on our initiative.
Just a few more slides in terms of examples of the situation. Now, I mentioned England earlier because we had the biggest house loss from wildfires here, or vegetation fires really, that we'd ever recorded. So that really shook the community here, especially also the firefighting communities. Fortunately, nobody got killed on those fires. But I'd just like to share with you some information about the situation in the north of England. So this is not where those extreme fires have occurred. But if you look at the monthly fire detections here, so we have a peak in spring, which is very different to what you get in most other countries in Europe. So this is basically monthly. So February, March is the highest fire count. But I'd also like to highlight what is burning in this area. So here, the pink color is essentially heathland, heather and heather grassland, which is a very common land cover type that's burning here. So if you're a firefighter in this area, this is the picture you will be exposed to. But if you then go to the south, if you work in the London area, the picture is completely different. So here we have the peak fire occurrence is actually in summer, as it is in many other areas in Europe. And what's burning here, what looks nice and green, is actually, it won't be green at that time. It's arable and improved groundness. So these are basically the crop fires and the grassland fires that occur in the dry season, essentially. And so this is just to highlight the need for understanding fire very specifically in different areas and for exchanging information, because the firefighters in the north, they will not necessarily be familiar with the situation in the south. We all seem to work in our own bubbles, whether that's as scientists or managers. So I think Firelinks and related activities, the continuation from Firelinks in particular, will help to basically give a broader understanding of the differences. And again, this was just an example from England. I'm not gonna show you other parts in the country, which again are very different. But just like to show you a few other things. So I'll give you an example from Turkey. So of course, as we said earlier, the fire weather across Europe and other parts of the world is changing, and therefore, and not only because of that, we tend to get an increase in fire. And one thing that's worth looking at is both the burned area and the number of fires. So the burned area is probably a more important aspect, because you can have a year with many small fires, but a relatively small overall burned areas, whereas in 2021, we had a really extreme situation in Turkey with the largest area burned in recorded history. 2016 was also pretty bad, but the number of fires wasn't actually that high. So it was, intermediate really between the years. And that just means that some of the fires really get out of control. They become really, really big. And these are the fires that are almost impossible to suppress by firefighters. Now, if you're interested in looking at the fire situation in your country, I'll put the link down here. So EFIS, the European Forest Fire Information System, gives you information about fires in your country over time, and not just actually those statistics here. You can also look at carbon emissions, broad estimates, of course, and other aspects of fire. So I'll just give you a couple of more examples from the recent past. So here's Spain. Of course, Artemi mentioned the extreme situation that we have in Spain in 2022. Again, off the scale really compared to recorded history. And then if we just go into the neighborhood in Portugal, directly adjacent to Spain, both in the Iberian Peninsula, a very different picture. So in Portugal, the situation has been relatively mild in terms of fires this year, whereas 2017, where we had over 100 people killed, of course, was the extreme year. So again, this also highlights how important it is to understand that fire across Europe and other parts of the world, of course, that will vary very strongly. The problems vary strongly, and even within a fire season, they can be very different. And just finally, one more slide. If you're interested in this issue of climate change and how fire weather might be changing, you can actually look up individual countries on this link. This is based on a study that a colleague, Matt Jones, has basically led, and many of us were involved with. So here's an example of Greece, what I showed earlier. So the actual increase, the observed increase in days with extreme fire weather. But you can go to this website here and actually look up most countries in the world, whether that's Austria, whether that's Germany, whether it's Iceland, for example, which really doesn't suffer very much from fires because there isn't anything to burn there, or very little to burn, although they have some grassland fires. But you're welcome to have a look at this if you're interested in what the actual situation is and what projected changes are in extreme fire weather.
Spain is probably the country with more research done on forest fire, with more scientists involved on forest fire, and this is because we had large forest fires in the past. This is an example of how is distributed the forest fire in Spain. You see that most of them are in Galicia, which is the wettest area of Spain, and then this is because it's a socioeconomic issue. It's not a question of climate. The fire is related to the society, not only about nature. Okay, then this is very important. This again is from a different period. Also, if you can see here how it's changing from year to year. Then in the north of Spain, the climate is even wetter than in London or in Amsterdam. But still, in the mountains, you have a lot of fire. And this is because farmers, they use fire as a tool. And then we cannot put this out of our equation. No? This is how it looks like. And this graph also shows how many hectares, thousands of hectares were burned in Spain per year. And you said that there are 4 years, from 1978 to 1992, in which they have 4 peaks. We reach almost 500,000 of hectares burned. And then after 1994, it went down and keep going down. But this is can be a good news in one way, but in my opinion is not. Because now, after so many years of successful fight by the firefighters against fire, we have a lot of land abandoned, a lot of land with a high biomass, and then the next generation of fires will be very difficult to stop, as you have seen in my videos before. Then this is a paradox in forest fire, is as successful you are in now to stop fires, worse will be your situation in the future. Then we need to find an agreement on how to manage the forest land, and fire can be a solution, not only a problem. Okay, as Stefan said in the past, there is a continuous growing on the number of forest fires. You see the blue line, but the amount of land burned is not in this direction. We are very successful, but this can reach a very chaotic situation, like the videos that Mark Castellnou shared with me and I shared it with you show. Okay, then we need to be aware that the Atlanta abandonment, the changes in the socioeconomics of Europe, is resulting, especially in the Mediterranean, in a big risk of fire, but also in Eastern Europe, with a large plantation of pines that will burn very easily, with a high connectivity, with the lack of a mosaic in the landscape of different managements. All these are things that we need to learn, that the future in this topic will be really an environmental problem and a high risk for the population. We have more and more people living in the mountains, in the forest land, because they build their house there. And also more and more urbanization, that they have a real forest in the gardens. Then all of them can burn. And we know very little. We have colleagues here from Greece that they are an expert on that. And they, in the cost actions filings, they show us which can be the problem, with many casualties after the fires in areas that are in the interface between urban and rural areas. Okay, thank you, Anna. Just say this very quick to show all the audience that the future is not so positive in our opinion, because we are not using education, we are not using prevention to reduce the risk of fires.
Thank you, Artemi. That is an important thing to hear. Now, before we move on to the questions, I would like to give the screen over to Jesus, who will just give you an overview of the conferences.
Okay, thank you very much, and hi everyone. I am now in the course, with the students connected here in this webinar, and now I want just to share with you some slides related to our meeting. I think you can see now the screen. And one moment. So I think, okay. So in 2021, as Artemi mentioned, we celebrated the first Fire in the Air System Congress in Valencia, in eastern Spain. And in this meeting, this was a hybrid meeting because of the pandemic, and the people was something scared to travel to different countries. In this moment, then we organized this hybrid meeting with more or less 40, 50 people there in Valencia and the rest online. And during this meeting, we had many presentations, really interesting, and they were grouped into this book abstract and different topics related to forest fire management, biota, soils, as Saskia and Artemi mentioned. The main idea is to connect different topics and integrate the knowledge related to forest fire. The next year in Granada, we will have the second one. This second one meeting will be organized under the umbrella of Firelinks and the cost action projects and networking tools. And also now we are trying to catch more sponsors, more enterprises, stakeholders, policymakers involved and compromised with these kind of issues, the forest fire. And now the organizers, we are Temi, Yanis from Greece, and me, with a local organizing committee here in Granada. We are trying to catch policymakers from southern Spain, also firefighters, enterprises related to agriculture, for example, olive orchards, vineyards, and so on, also close to areas that they were burned in the last months because of this big forest fire affecting this area in Granada, in southern Spain. In this time, we also have really interesting sessions related to fire ecology, the resilience of the landscape related to climate change. We will related to the Global Fire Partnership. We also have different regional sessions regarding, for example, Eastern Europe, Africa, Northern America, and also specific topics related to soil hydrology, rural changes, landscape, and artificial intelligence and machine learning. Now, this is a key topic here in Granada, is artificial intelligence. Also, some editorial were interested to organize special issues and sponsor our meeting. This is also interesting because also scientific enterprises or scientific editorials are paying attention to this issue and how to communicate this in other backgrounds. And now we will organize with Saskia Kestra a special issue in trees, forests, and people, and also our local journal, Cuaderno Geográfico, is an open access journal, totally free, is also willing to organize a special issue to show the main results. And also Stefan Dörr is also guest editor with me in this special issue. The university is also open to share and open to disseminate all the information obtained in this meeting and in Firelinks in a mode totally new, is open access and also free of charge. Then the people can read the main results and they don't have to pay. Then we are also happy with the university because they are trying to disseminate this key issue related to forest fire. In these kind of conferences, we discover, we show that also this is very interesting to have a pre-conference and post-conference event. What is this? The first day before the meeting, we will have a tour through different parts of Granada city to learn about this incredible city with a lot of history. Because, for example, you can see the image below. One professor here, Jesus Fernandez, was showing some parts of the city center in Granada when we celebrated our working group number 5 meeting, explaining how this city and how the Mediterranean city were designed considering the landscape and also now the forest fire. And related to this, when the meeting, when the scientific presentations and also the policymakers and firefighters present the different works, then we will have 2 days to visit the recent burn areas close to Granada city, the Valle de Lecrín, the municipality of the Guájares, and San Miguel. They were places that they were burned, lamentably, this year. And now we have the opportunity to visit the different experimental areas and how the firefighters were trying to manage this situation during the last months when we had this forest fire. So this is from my side, this little presentation.
Thank you, Jesus, for the presentation. I think we are almost at the end of the time, but I see that there are some questions that Stefan has already answered on the fire weather index and the variables in it. Also, you mentioned that the fire maintains ecosystems in natural forests. Are there any nature-based solutions to fight forest fires in Europe? And also, like, how are the fires caused? Are most caused by human hands or accidents or on purpose? And there's also one on, is there solid research how the type of fire, biomass burn, etc. affects the emission regarding environmental contaminants? Stefan, I don't know, you have answered this in writing, but do you want to say something on the questions still answer via audio before we start?
I think I've answered all the questions now. I've been busy typing. Perhaps if you allow me, the most critical one I think is that of what we can do to basically maintain ecosystems and especially avoid destructive fires in forests in terms of nature-based solutions. So I mentioned one aspect already, and that is carrying out prescribed burning under mild fire weather conditions to reduce fuel, which helps preventing more extreme fires. But there's only one solution, and it's not always perfect, because as climate change increases, the conditions under which fires burn in terms of becoming more severe, those measures become less and less effective. But in terms of nature-based solutions, I think the reality is that we will need to live with fire. And some ecosystems will actually be changing from fire. There's very little we can do about this. By preventing fire in some areas, we will just making fire worse in the future. So we need to find ways to manage the landscape, and not just forests, but other landscapes in a sustainable way. But we also will have to accept that with climate change, some areas will simply change. This is basically no way around it. So there may be there will be other nature-based solutions that are more specific. Perhaps Saskia or Tim, you want to add a few things there, but the one thing that's clear, fire is not going to go away.
Yeah, it's already there.
Thank you. Thank you, Stefan. Thank you all the attendees and Anna for organizing this. Also Saskia and Jesus for contributing. In the key question for me for the future, because the cost actions, I think we already accomplished 80% of our objectives, which is to build a community around the topic. Now our challenge is that this community will be seen. Then we need to be more active in social media. We need to be more active in the media in general, in newspapers, TVs, and so on. And be aware that the topic of fire will be present more and more. We have more urban areas. This means more rural areas abandoned with low vegetation, low population and high vegetation cover. Vegetation is recovering day after day, and this increased the amount of fuel, and this will end in forest fires that will be not easy to control. The firefighters, they are requesting that we have a very active policies, a very active management of the forest lands to reduce the amount of fuel. And this can be done, which is very expensive, with machinery and by hand with the people established in these areas, or and this is quite new for many of the audiences, the use of falla. We can use falla during the winter under control with low intensity fallas to manage the landscape and avoid that in the middle of summer we have a large continuity of the big fires. 80% of the land burned in Europe is done by what we call large fires, which are larger than 500 hectares. These fires are the ones that are really a problem, because they increase later the continuity for the connectivity for the soil erosion, for the water, and for the use of the land. Okay, this big land affected. Also, we have other activities. We have other options, which is to make alive the rural areas with the people living there, and for this we need to recover the use of grazing. Can be from goats till horses. In fact, in south of Europe, we use donkeys. Then at the end, what we need is that our montage will be alive. Will be people there managing the land in collaboration with scientists, with land managers, with policymakers, all together. And this is because it's very important that we will arrive to an agreement. And no few people from different offices will decide the end, the final landscape we will have. Is also the people that is living in the countryside will help to take decisions. And then the cost action is in this direction. FaraLinks is in this direction. In our meetings, there are scientists, but also stakeholders. In the last meeting we did here in Valencia, there was 90 people in the field. Only 15 of them were scientists. All the others were policymakers, the mayor of the town, shepherds, people that work as a farmers. And even I invited people that come from primary, secondary schools. They are teachers, and they told us, all that you say to us is true. It's true that the falla has been in our ecosystem for 400 million years. It's true that the humans manage falla more than 1 million years. It's also true that 10,000 years ago, when the agriculture was developed, the falla was key to start the agriculture. Still now is used in agriculture. Also, when we see the falla is the unique, is unique for humans. No other animals are using falla, only us, and we control the landscape. Even falla was probably the beginning of the communities sitting down around the falla, planning as a society. No, it's not in our primary, secondary school books and handbooks. Then we need to make a big change in the view of forest falla, the view of falla in the earth system and in our society for the future. And FaraLinks is in this direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Artemi, and thank you to all the speakers for giving us an overview of this extremely important topic that actually, yeah, it touches all of us. And it's, as you've mentioned a few times, it's not getting better. And also, if any of the participants want to join the Global Fire Partnership, I put in the chat the email to contact them, because I think this is a very wide variety of stakeholders, as you said, that you have also invited to the action meetings. But I think we're running out of time, so I would like to still thank all the speakers for presenting the action, the work you do, and the importance of it. And thank you for continuing the work. And thank you also to all the participants that have joined us today to listen to it.